Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the Larouche Organization with your daily video update for June 17th, 2025. Well, what can one say in the face of a lack of sanity among the leaders of the so-called West, but that we have to recognize the danger of the potential extinction of the human race, and we have to act accordingly. You can't trust these buffoons who were meeting in Canada at the G7 meeting, and you can't take the option of burrowing into bunkers or zoning out or giving up. It's moments like this that the defining quality of the population has to come out, and that quality has to be based on an empathy for mankind and a rejection of the short-term foolish solutions that one finds through war and launching of chaos. There's still time for solutions, but that time is growing short. And that's why we're calling on you to take the emergency leaflet issued by the Schiller Institute and deploy like hell with it. Get it around everywhere. Get the discussions going. And not discussions just on the stupidity or corruption of the leadership, but of the importance of recognizing our responsibility for the future of mankind. Now just take a look at yesterday's G7 meeting in Canada. What a gaggle of fools. Posturing while supporting war, scratching each other's back, no serious discussion. And unfortunately, the schizophrenia of President Trump was on display. On the one hand, he criticized the G7 for excluding Russia and talked about the importance of his initiative for a normalization of relations with Russia. He also restated his opposition to war and called for peaceful resolution to the ongoing crises. On the other hand, he sent out a tweet on his Truth Social, quote, "Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran, the capital of Iran." There are almost 17 million people in metropolitan Tehran. Where are they going to go? What does that mean? Does that mean they should be prepared for the possibility of an Israeli nuclear strike on the city? And this is occurring at a moment where there are indications of a U.S. intervention directly against Iran on behalf of Bibi Netanyahu's war crime government. So you then also have the fact that while Trump is focused on the current war in the Middle East, there's a devolution in the situation with Ukraine. That is, the ongoing discussion process is breaking down. The June 2nd meeting did not take place because of the Ukrainian assault on Russia. The Russian-U.S. summit, or regular discussion, I should say, was canceled. And the idea of meeting with Iran to discuss nuclear weapons in Oman was thrown out the window because of this war. So, in the meantime, Trump is besieged on all sides. On the one hand, you have the deployments of the billionaires-funded No Kings demonstrations. You have these cancellation of meetings. And you have a crisis emerging on the economy, which I'll get to in a moment. Now, the other thing that's happening is while Trump is under increasing pressure from the deep state neoconservatives that he said he would get rid of, that he would clear out the deep state from his government, well, they're increasingly in charge. And more importantly, the direction from London, the City of London, the British establishment, the military intelligence establishment, is becoming more visible. In particular, in the person of Sir Richard Dearloffe, the former head of MI6, who lied us into the war in Iraq in 2003. He's now revealing his hand and the UK hand in stirring up the current crises. Now, as the military side of the strategic crisis deepens, we have the looming danger of a financial crash. And this is something that has to be taken seriously. And instead of taking a sane approach to the spiraling of debt, which is crushing the real economy, which is preventing credit from going to productive entrepreneurs, and instead is going into arms merchants and military buildup, this is following precisely the collapse function that Lyndon LaRouche identified when he first unveiled his triple curve function, which showed that the escalation of monetary assets combined with the so-called financialization, those are growing at exponential rates, while the physical economy that supports that is collapsing. Who's talking about that? Who's addressing that? And this is an integral part of why we're heading toward a world of wars, because the imperial City of London bankers and their central bank allies around the world are not willing to give up their control over credit and their control over trade. So as a result, we see that more debt is being added in the military buildup. At the same time, there's a deindustrialization in countries such as Germany, France, and Italy. Now then, let's take one other aspect of this. When we talk about an arms race, there's a new warning from SIPRI, the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, of a coming nuclear arms race. And this is part of the unraveling of the present system. The last nuclear arms agreement between the two major nuclear powers, Russia and the United States, expires early next year. And what we're seeing is a race to develop new and more sophisticated nuclear weapons. The director of SIPRI warned that given the proliferation of semi-automated technologies, we may, he said, quote, stumble into a nuclear war that nobody in their right mind would ever want, unquote. Well, that's true. Who wants nuclear war? There are people in the U.S. and in NATO who are planning on how to win a nuclear war. They say that, well, if we're going to have a war, we might as well plan to win it. How about taking the opposite approach? Let's negotiate. There are solutions available. The most important would be to agree on the necessity for legitimate security concerns of all nations and working together for economic growth that will lift the conditions of, or eliminate poverty in all nations and create the potential for further mutually beneficial programs, such as the OASIS plan as a solution to the crisis in the Middle East. So instead of stumbling into nuclear war, instead of driving the debt to the point that the financial system collapses, why not take a step back and look at the Larouche Solutions? And that's why I'm asking you to take seriously your responsibility to get around the emergency leaflet produced by the Schiller Institute. I'll have a link to it in the description section. It's very straightforward. It has a few specific proposals, such as an international body that would oversee nuclear processing, the development of nuclear materials. More importantly, moving to a new credit system in which all nations will be able to generate the credit needed to develop their full economies. These are things that could be done at any moment, instead of talking about who's tougher and who can win a war. Now, additionally, tomorrow, we'll have the weekly dialogue with Helga Zepp-LaRouche, and these have become increasingly interesting as Helga has taken on leadership of the International Peace Coalition, which she founded, to bring together people of all different parties and all different outlooks around a common policy of peace aimed at the common interests of mankind. So don't give up. Don't dig yourself into a hole. Don't sit there watching streaming videos. Get out and talk to people. You'll find that's the most exciting thing you can do at a moment where your actions may determine